Welcome to the second episode of Real Talk with Claudia. Guys, I've been so excited about it. I've been looking forward to it, meditating about it, visualizing about it, having monologues, because today we'll be discussing something very special to me as well, and that I'm excited to share with the rest of the world, which is Stoicism. But before I go any further, may I start off by thanking you. If you're tuning in this podcast for the second time and you've actually watched the first episode, I want to say thank you so much. And today we have a second episode. So clearly we are moving and growing. And just to give a huge shout out to everybody who gave us feedback. Clearly there was a backlash on TikTok, but I just appreciated every comment that is there, because it is helping us know what to improve, what to get better at, and what you guys are looking forward to. So yeah, just a huge shout out to you, and just to say, keep it up. So today we are talking about the power of Stoicism in modern life. And I think the fact that you are tuning in, I've been saying that this is the episode that is going to filter a lot of people. And if you're going to be able to watch this episode until the end, it means that you're very serious about your self-development journey. And I think it is going to be quite an uncomfortable, controversial conversation, especially for religious people. We live in a religious country. A lot of people are Christians, and it may question a lot of your beliefs as well. So for you to actually listen this podcast to the end, it's going to say a lot about your mindset and your open-mindedness. And, one of the measures of intelligence is being able to entertain an idea, even if you do not necessarily agree with it. And I would say that having that kind of a mindset is what shaped much of my self-development journey, being able to listen to things that are outside of your social conditioning. So brace yourselves. I want that by the end of this podcast, if somebody asked you about Stoicism, you could be able to talk about it for like 5 to 15 minutes. And again, one of the other measures of intelligence, it's being able to talk about any topic in a lengthy manner. So that is what I want for you as well in this podcast and moving forward. So let us start off by just understanding Stoicism. What is Stoicism? So to start off, Stoicism was founded by Zeno of Citium from Cyprus. And it's just a school of thought that emanates from ancient Greek and ancient Rome. And basically what it encourages is virtue, which is excellence, traits of excellence, morally, intellectually, and socially. And the cultivation of virtue is basically a foundation for a well-lived life, which in Stoicism they call eudaimonia. So what we are trying to do is to live a well-lived life. But to be very succinct and make it very easy for you to understand, it is living a calm, tranquil life, even in the face of adversities. So Stoicism has 4 pillars or tenets, which is courage, wisdom, justice, and self-moderation, which I'll delve into in a bit. And I'll be kind of sharing how I've had to apply these maxims into my day-to-day life, and which has kind of led me to the mindset that I have right now, and could be very helpful in your personal journey as well. So to start off just a little bit describing these 4 tenets, one of them being courage. So courage is basically being able to practice wisdom under pressure, to keep on pushing even when things are not going very well. And I think just a very fresh example of this, you see with the entire backlash on TikTok, I think for me, that would have been a moment whereby I easily give up and I'm crushed by everyone who's like, she's trying too much, or, where are you coming from? What are you talking about? All of that. It would have been a moment for me to crash. But with the practice of Stoicism, the approach for me was very different. It was like, okay, if this is an obstacle, make the obstacle the way. Keep on pushing. It's not very easy, but push the boundaries, keep on going. So it's one of the ways whereby I apply courage into my life, but it's also the ways in which I think in your personal life as well, you could have an opportunity whereby you're facing a very challenging situation, let's say at work or in a relationship, and you want to give up. To have that maxim guiding your decision to say, oh, this is the moment where I have to be courageous, would be very helpful to help you overcome challenges and actually make the obstacle the way, make it work for you, you know. And one other maxim is wisdom. So this is the discernment of good and evil or bad. And it is actually what informs your decision making. Wisdom is greatly shaped by experiences, of course. But one of the things that Stoicism teaches you with regards to wisdom is that it's important to try and be in touch with your own reasoning. So it speaks about how we've all been endowed or we've been gifted with an inbuilt sense of knowing what is wrong and right. So most of it is just trying to tap into your intuition and reason to understand how to do things for the greater common good and avoid bad things, leading us to the other tenet, which is basically justice. So, which is basically doing what is fair and right, even when it's hard. And this is a maxim that Marcus Aurelius, one of the Stoics, regards as one of the most important, because I think it could be very hard to be just, more especially because as individuals, we behave from a place of self-interest most of the time. So we think about ourselves. And so many times you'll be faced with situations whereby you may have to put your own personal gains aside for what is actually right. And then the other maxim is moderation, which I personally love, which I personally feel like has shaped a lot in my journey as well. So self-moderation is basically self-control or discipline. Sometimes it's what they would call temperament. And I've seen it shape my life so much because I used to have quite a mercurial temperament. I had such a hot temper. And with self-moderation, what it teaches you is that moderate anything in your life. So I've learned to really control my temper, my anger, my emotions, sort of tame them. And I feel like it has improved my relationships, my views about life, and subsequently improving my experiences at work and in my personal relationships as well. But when it comes to self-moderation as well, I think it has played such a huge role when it also comes to my weight loss journey, because it does not only speak for emotions, it also speaks for general things like noting how much you eat food, you know? So one of the things that I've read before is that majority of people who lose weight, they gain it again within 2 years of losing that weight, right? And I think the fact that I have been able to maintain the same weight for almost 3 years now is because of that very maxim. You know, even if I enjoy something or I'm craving something or I've been having it, there's always a thought at the back of my head that I need to moderate myself. So this is a cliche. Too much of anything is not good for you. So I think it goes for everything in life. Is it food? Is it partying? Is it really anything? Too much of anything isn't good for you. So this is how the tenet self-moderation has played such a huge role in my life. And I think it would really greatly improve any area of your life that you struggle with. For people who struggle maybe with addictions as well, it's a maxim that could be really, really useful in your life. Now, I just want to share a little bit on why I was interested in Stoicism. It started off with me questioning religion because I have a religious background. And at one point, because of the anger, I think I am grieving the loss of my father, which happens later at a later stage in my life. He passed away when I was 8. And then mid high school and going to uni, that is when I'm finally processing that I don't have a father. And you know, sometimes you're having conversations with people and they mention that dad did this. And I'm pretty sure it happens to a lot of people. Some people don't have both parents, some don't have mothers. And you see somebody is being called by their mom and it saved mama. And you know, there's that sort of a hole inside you that, oh my gosh, I wish I had my mom. I wish I'd be receiving a call from them, or I wish I'd be doing something for my parent. So I was just sort of going through that similar journey. And then I had the anger of why did it die, which led to another thought about God. why does death even exist? And this thoughts just kept on spiraling up. It led to war. Why does war exist? Why does injustice exist? Why does poverty exist? Why does unfairness exist? And I'm even then led to question even the existence of God, which I come across a lot of young people, and we have these kinds of conversations. And I think you can sort of relate to this. You're probably on a journey whereby you're questioning the whole church idea, the whole God idea. This is how I was led to this kind of a philosophy. And as I do my research, I come across different types of philosophies. And for me, it sparks such a great interest because for the first time, I am hearing I'm hearing about something out of what I've learned in class. I'm hearing about something outside of what I've learned from home, the social conditioning as well. And I come across other philosophies. But as I was saying, what truly attracted me towards Stoicism, it's that it was empowering me in the present moment and what is within my control without having an external deity or having to lean on anything external. And this is not to say that having something external like God to lean on is wrong. No, this is where it gets to challenge religious people. But not that it's wrong or right, but the idea with my personal journey was that I felt anger towards God. Why so much suffering existed when God is love, when God has the power to remove all of this suffering. And so I go on to do research, and now I'll be sharing other philosophies so that you can sort of like differentiate Stoicism with other philosophies. And, if you're someone who's interested in like a way of life or finding a guide to how to live a well-lived life, this is going to be very interesting to you because it's very unconventional from the typical teachings or types of theism that we're familiar with, like maybe Christianity, Buddhism, Islamic, and the likes. So as I was doing my research, I came across, I'll just mention the 4 types of philosophies, which was Stoicism, Nihilism, Hedonism, and Cynicism. So basically, for Stoicism, as I've already mentioned, it just promotes the ability to live a calm life even in the face of adversities, right? And again, just to give you a heads up, you can be a Stoic and still believe in God, all right? All right, let's move on. And then Cynicism. So basically, Cynicism started off as a school of thought that encourages living a simple life. And in modern life, we can see this in people who live as hippies, living a very simple life, and that is very close to nature. But it then changed with people adopting the school of thought and within generations and eras. And it's now described as people who are sinners. They're described as people who are distrustful, right? And they can be very, they have the belief that people act based on selfishness. So whenever they do, it really doesn't believe in altruism. It just believes that everybody does something for selfish reasons, which is something that I'm not entirely against, because I've made an example before that what if I started this podcast because I'm trying to create a community for myself. So the idea here is that as much as this podcast is about helping people with their self-development journey and having conversations about the things that matter and building a community, but it is also benefiting me in a way because I'm building this community for myself. Speaking of building community, can I strongly encourage that you do things that you're passionate about, guys? So I had a lady DM me on Instagram, and we've been having a conversation. I was so excited and brimming with gratitude because we were talking about podcasts, about how to live a well-lived life, about habits. And I was like, this is happening because I've been sharing my thoughts on self-development and wellness, and it attracted this person to me. So imagine any type of business or service that you start, or giving back to community that you do, anything that you're passionate about, it literally attracts the community of people that you want in your life. So I just really wanted to encourage that we go for the things that we love, regardless of the challenges. Remember courage, stoicism, and just, face those adversities. There's so much reward that you get from doing the things that you feel like it's your calling, or you were meant to do, or you're just drawn towards in general. Back to basics. So the other school of thought or other philosophy is hedonism that I talked about. So basically it encourages, or it promotes the belief that the highest form of it basically prioritizes pleasure as the highest value, of living life. And I think for me, it wasn't very appealing at the time, because I was at a point where I'm very angry and sad. I wasn't looking for pleasure. I was looking for a philosophy that was going to explain my emotions and my experiences of the world as they are and help me to overcome them. I wasn't looking for a distraction or to live a happy life. I wanted explanations and to live a better life, to actually understand what I'm here for and what is a well-lived life. And, speaking of a well-lived life, it's one of the reasons why Stoicism appealed so much. It's because it tapped into the theories of psychology as well. In fact, Stoicism was sort of like the cognitive behavioral therapy back in the day, before it was popular at the time, and which is why I find that it is something that would be very helpful for our generation, as we are facing so many mental health issues. It does tap into helping with those as well. And the other school of thought is nihilism. So basically, nihilism is a philosophy that distrusts the belief that anything has value or has meaning. So people who are nihilist believe that nothing matters. And there are people who'll be normally very skeptical of existence, and they would be pessimist. And I think normally people who commit suicide get to that point because they were nihilistic. They're like, anyway, I don't matter. Life doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And, they could have the inclination to even destroy. There could easily be people who become anarchists. They don't believe in governments, in leadership. Basically, for them, it's like nothing matters. So as for my personal journey, none of these schools of philosophies were very appealing, or were giving me the solutions for a day-to-day way of solving my problems and facing life. So what are the misconceptions about Stoicism? Stoicism, for a lot of people that I've had conversations with, when I'll tell them that I'm a Stoic, normally they'll say that, oh, so you don't feel. So there's a misconception around Stoicism that it promotes emotional suppression and disregards genuine emotions. And let me explain to you why is that. That is because Stoicism encourages the fact that, let's say for an example, you have a boss at work, right? And they say something that makes you feel very inadequate or incompetent. And then you get angry and you're fuming and you really want to tell them off, or you feel like, I'm just going to quit right now. You're just having this sort of a reaction that would not very seem, in most cases, people would say you're so emotional, what in that instance, what Stoicism would encourage is for you to pause, step back, and observe. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling right now? It actually takes emotions as feedback, trying to discern, what are my emotions trying to communicate with me right now? Why am I angry? Is what they're saying factual? Is it true about myself? And going through that entire process, you may become, or you may come across as someone who's not emotional, because you're not having an immediate reaction. Instead, you are observing and breaking down your emotions, trying to understand how this is even actually making you feel in your physical body. Sometimes this may come across as having a runny stomach, a headache. You may feel your neck really get tense, your jaws get tense. So it's observation of all these things. And which is why I was mentioning that with Stoicism, it's very interesting and practical because it taps into psychology as well. And when you read about psychology or therapy, it's the same tips and advice that you'd be getting from them that kind of observe how your emotions are trying to communicate with you. So these are one of the responses that are encouraged by Stoicism. And I've practiced this a lot as well. And I think there's been a drawback of it, which is something that I want to bring into your attention if you do consider taking on Stoicism. That I think there was a point where I became emotionally stale myself because of the observing and acceptance of things as they are and of fate. I remember one time with my then partner, they said, Claudia, I feel like you always put on a front or a facade. I feel like I've never seen the real you. I've never seen you blurt out of anger or express strong emotion. And I feel like, and everything that you say is crafted. And as maybe there's a degree of that is true, but the reason that it comes across that way, it's because I've stopped having an immediate reaction, but instead I try to understand what part of what is happening now is actually making me angry, and should I be angry about it? The same with the first episode of the podcast where we are having the backlash on TikTok. The whole time it's happening, and I think there's a degree to that where I wanted to be emotional, especially when it was feedback from people that I lived with on a day-to-day. But I just sat there and observed, and I was thinking, okay, if people are angry that I said University of Luyengo, I did say University of Luyengo, and it's probably a legitimate concern. And maybe next time I should say University of Eswatini, So it's those kinds of things whereby there was just no way that it was going to crush me, because I stepped out of the emotional reaction and stepped into logic and rationalizing it. So to a lot of people, you may come across very calm and like you're not an emotional person, but no, you are an emotional person. It's just that you tend to pay attention to your emotions and how they affect your thinking and your life. And one of the other misconceptions would be that it promotes an indifferent approach, which is something that I've also experienced as well. And I think it affected my ambition so much. It came to a point whereby I wasn't very materialistic or ambitious. And of course, Stoicism does advocate for that. And I think it goes a long way when it comes to mental health, because you start to accept life as it is. Okay, I don't have 1, 2, and 3 that other people have. It's fine. I'm happy with where I am. And it actually teaches you to work with what you have. I remember when I started creating content, I would take videos with my Android, and I did think that maybe if I had an iPhone, it would be better. It would be better quality videos. It would probably gain more traction on social media. But I did not just focus on not having an iPhone. It was like, okay, what's my current situation? And what can I do with my current situation? So with that, you reach a certain level of satisfaction with your life, and you're content with it, and you try to figure out, how can I make things work within my environment? And because you sort of form this detachment towards materialistic things, they stop being a prison to you, because then you're prepared that they may come and go. So there's an economic anecdote about how there's a conservationalist that owned a ranch, and they would make a joke about how the ranch is not mine. The bank borrows it to me for as long as I can pay rates. So the idea behind that joke is that nothing belongs to me or to us, and thinking in that way kind of prepares you for loss. One of the things that I normally personally think about is my reputation, I should be ready that it could get it could be terminated at any point. And it could be relationships. I could lose any of the people that I have in my life at any point in time. It could be social class. It could be many things. And that kind of detachment to anything external, I think it kind of frees you from that prison of being attached to those things instead. So yeah, it's one of the things that I would just like to share with you, and you'd probably reflect on and see how you could apply them into your day-to-day life to actually improve the way that you make your decisions and your approach to life. So now let's touch on a little bit on how Stoicism maybe can apply into your day-to-day life in this modern life, of course. Giving you practical tips, of course, on how you can apply these tips. So one of them being, how can you use Stoicism to alleviate symptoms of depression and anxiety? My mouth is getting dry, so let me just have this taste of luxury. Aqualux. Quenches the thirst. All right. So, how can Stoicism help you alleviate anxiety and depression? So, for an example, with anxiety, one of the main causes of anxiety is thinking about the future, right? Could be fear of failure. It could be fear of, I've experienced it as well before. I remember when I was in uni, I was very worried about, would I be able to survive outside of uni? I'd have to look for a job and all of those things. It's just basically thinking about the future and expectations, being able to meet expectations. And the application of Stoicism, how can you apply Stoicism in that kind of a situation? So one of the maxims or tips that I would advise, or that Stoicism advises, would be focus on the present moment, right? And it could be like, oh, Claudia, maybe you speak from a place of privilege. Lo waridinga ukuthi ngitawudlani noma irent ngiyoyibhadala ngani, which dizathu leqinile letingakwenda ukuthi ube ne-anxiety, right? Ube worried nge-future. But how does staying grounded in the present moment helps? It actually shifts your mindset or your mind from the problem and grounds you into your current environment and acceptance of your present situation. Okay, fine. I'm poor. That's the situation. And I don't know what I'm going to eat, right? What can I do? Do I go to my neighbor and ask to sweep their yard for tena malangeni so that I can buy bread? I'm an orphan. What do I do? Can I actually leverage that I'm an orphan to ask for opportunities? Because it's a thing, I was telling one of the producers here before we started that, it's there's so much around mental health that sometimes it's hard to address because we are speaking about different problems at different levels. For somebody else, they're facing mental health issues, but they have a job. They're facing different kinds of issues. And somebody whom for them, they're at the survival level. You see, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're at that stage of they need shelter, food, and clothing. How can you apply Stoicism in that situation, right? I'm an orphan. What do I do with my situation? Leverage that you're an orphan. Ask for opportunities, stating your problem. Somebody is going to tap into the emotion and feel pity maybe, or you tap into their sense of altruism to want to give back. Leverage that for yourself. So that is kind of what shifting to the present moment helps you with. You are a young person who finished university. There are no jobs. Every inkundla is allocated about 3 million every year. But ihlanganani nibe 10 nihambe niye enkundleni and apply for opportunities there. So you see, shifting back to the present moment, to how things are, and shifting it to what can I do? What is within my control? Instead of thinking maybe this is what the government should be doing, or the government should be creating jobs. Instead, you think about what's within my capacity. You know, in stoic terms, basically it says, you know, you allow reason to dictate your actions, helping you achieve your full potential. So you tap into your intuition, you tap in your natural knowing, you tap into the present moment to create solutions instead of being nihilistic, maybe instead of being shifting blame to your current circumstances. So those are one of the ways that you can actually use Stoicism to help you solve problems and actually cure depression and anxiety. Workplace, how can you apply Stoicism in the workplace? So one of the people that I help with self-development, not even one, a couple of people that I have conversations with, and you know, they talk about the toxic environment. We have young leaders nowadays because things are changing, and those young leaders, maybe they're not fully equipped to lead. And you notice that sometimes they maybe make decisions from a place of insecurity, or sometimes it can cause a lot of noise and animosity in the work environment, you know, or sometimes it's challenges between subordinates and a leader. And it's like, what do I do in these circumstances? And so basically, what Stoicism can help you do is to improve your decision making and improve peace. Because now basically what is happening, you are becoming a tranquil person and a peaceful person, a person who processes and synthesizes their emotions, who thinks before they actually act. So in that kind of an environment, you would start off by accepting the environment that you're in. Maybe it's toxic. Maybe you have a boss that is very insecure, and the insecurity spreads out throughout the team. They gatekeep information. You know, you can think of all of those examples. What's your role there? Maybe your role there is to be the person who accepts that leader, starting off with acceptance, right? To say, why would this person behave the way that they do? How can I support them? How can I appeal to that insecurity and make them feel accepted as well? You know, the wisdom from the Stoicism is going to help you discern how you make decisions in that environment in the way that encourages growth, communal values, acceptance, and wisdom, justice, fairness, and courage, and resilience. You understand? And how can we apply Stoicism maybe in social and environmental issues? I think the beauty of Stoicism is that if you are one with nature, as it speaks to the importance of being one with nature or the laws of nature, you are definitely going to be someone who cares about your environment and your social environment as well. It talks about justice. So you will want to see fairness around you, right? You will want to be one with nature. And you also understand that you are an extension of nature as well. So you'll want to care for nature. You will not pollute your environment. You will take care of nature. You know, you will grow plants maybe, because you're trying to empower nature and just be mindful of the fact that you are part of that environment and you want it to thrive as much as it can possibly be. And this is partly why Stoicism is very important to me, and I want to encourage it in my environment, because I think with the application of these maxims, they could be applied everywhere, in families, in the workplace, in relationships, in even in your career. When you think of careers, we talk about currently in Eswatini, unemployment rate is about 59%. Poverty rate, 60% of the population lives, 60% of the population lives, poverty rate, 60% of, what do they say? The poverty line, below the poverty line. 60% of the population lives below the poverty line. Those stats are huge. And I think there's a lot of room there to practice Stoicism. It could allow people to be grounded, and through being grounded, they can think of solutions. They could stop pitying themselves or being nihilistic and actually thinking of ways to live a more meaningful life. And that could actually look like environmentalism, as I've already mentioned. If you care about history, to you, it could look like preserving history. You are contributing in the current world. It could look like egalitarianism or libertarianism, which is basically the belief in fairness. It could be preserving religion in itself, right? Anything that you believe is good for society and humanity, it's what you could be working on. And eventually, you know, when you work on things that you're passionate about, there's some sort of reward. If it's not an intrinsic victory, it would come back in monetary terms, you know? So yeah, you know, you get it. I hope you're still with me. Hey. So, so since we're running a little bit out of time, I just want to share with you a couple of popular Stoics. You may come across some of this post on Instagram, and you may want to pay a little bit of more attention to them. One of them being Marcus Aurelius. Marcus actually would write a journal called Meditations, and he would basically journal his life experiences. And most of it does talk on temperaments, on a tranquil life, on fairness, and all of that. And he was actually an emperor. And he was listed amongst the 5 good emperors. And he has a lot of amazing quotes as well that you could apply into your daily life, where when you face a challenge, you're like, okay, how can I apply Stoicism here? In fact, this is what I normally tell to people that I coach. I'm like, okay, I understand. This is what happened. How would you respond as a Stoic? And most of the time, the answer that I'm looking for is what is within my control, what is outside of my control. Literally, if you could list the things that are within your control and outside of your control, you'd most likely have a solution for most of your problems. Another Stoic, it's Epictetus. So the interesting thing about Epictetus is that he was born into slavery, and moving on in life, he had access to education and was taken on by an emperor, Nero, a Roman emperor, and he started a school of philosophy, Stoicism as well. And the reason I bring this up, it's because a person who's born into slavery, today we are reading philosophies from them, helping us live a better life, which clearly shows that suffering is not the end of the world. It could be the portal to living a well-lived life. This morning I was reading a quote that said, to live is just to get by, but to suffer is to learn how to find meaning in life, along those lines, you know. And which is why, for me, suffering is so important, as much as we can complain about it and the unfairness. But things like Stoicism help us to have hope and get through that unfairness in the most amicable way that we possibly can. And another Stoic is Seneca. So the interesting thing about Seneca is that he was wealthy and in an influential position, but things changed whereby he faced exile and was forced to commit suicide by the person that he was tutoring, which is Nero. And here is another classic example of how all these people turned suffering into books, into quotes, into maxims that today we can use to live better lives, to clearly show that you can live a well-lived life even in the face of adversities. And for the modern day philosophy, we have modern Stoics like Ryan Holiday. I read the Daily Stoic every day. I've mentioned in the first podcast, which helps me stay grounded in Stoicism. And, you know, guys, to share, sometimes I have a hectic day. I have to start my day at work. I have a difficult client. And the fact that I read the Daily Stoic and something happens and I'm reminded of the Stoic quote or whatever passage that I read. And I'm like, Claudia, don't take this personally. You know, this person is probably acting based on their own bad day that they had, or they're actually frustrated because they're looking for a good service. They're worried why I'm not solving this problem for them. There's many ways to approach these problems. So it actually helps for me to read this Daily Stoic. And another thing that I'm going to share about philosophy, it's one thing to know it. It's like knowing that I have to exercise and actually going to the gym to exercise. The same with philosophy. It's one thing to know the philosophy, but it's another to remember to apply it when you face challenges. And another Stoic or another philosopher that would basically speak on Stoic maxims is Eckhart Tolle. The first book that I read was by him, The Power of the Now. They had a Super Soul series with Oprah Winfrey that I was listening to on Spotify. They have 10 episodes there. I think it would be very helpful to listen to it because it would have day-to-day tips on how to live a Stoic life. And that could greatly improve your day-to-day life and approach to life. So, yes, we didn't delve into the God part and all of that, but we'll delve into it because this is not the last episode, isn't it? And because of time, I just like to move on to share a couple of things that you can take away, or a couple of Stoic maxims again that you can take away with you that I also use as well, which is accept only what is true. Always try to find the truth. Do fact checking. I've been talking and blabbing about Stoicism here. Go and read about it. Go research about it. Accept only what is true. The other one is work for the common good. Which is partly why maybe I was motivated to start this podcast as well, because I believed that it would work for the common good. So always try to work for the common good. And I think there are a lot of ideas that could emanate from that, which would include giving back to community, which would include starting a business because you're trying to do things for the common good. And matching our needs and wants with what is in our control. This basically speaks to being okay with the position that you're in life. You know, I think most of us are so depressed nowadays because we are trying to live like the people that we see on Instagram. We're trying to live like kings. We all want to have fancy cars, fancy apartments. And not all of us are going to have that. And because not all of us are going to have that, it means that not everybody has to look for a rich husband. These are things that I talk to myself about, you know, at times. I have to remind myself. You know, but yeah, not all of us are going to have that kind of a life. So sort of like just accept where you are in life and work with what you have at times and learn contentment with what you have. And embrace what nature has in store for us. And this basically acceptance of fate as well. Just accepting that things are probably unfolding the way that they have to unfold the way that they have to unfold. And which is where it kind of, for me, it was relieving when I started having doubts about believing in God, because I sort of see every situation like it's unfolding the way that it's supposed to unfold. God has nothing to do with this. God is not testing me. God is not going to solve the problem for me. Things are unfolding the way that they're unfolding. And I sort of have to find out how I can solve this, how I can keep on living even in the midst of experiencing this problem. But, you know, if you're keen for us to have a deeper conversation in terms of God and Stoicism and all that, please do engage on YouTube, on the comments, on Instagram. Let's have conversations about these things, because that's the only way that we can shape culture, the only way that we can shape future generations, and the only way that we can break social constructs, think out of the box, and we clearly know the why behind we do everything that we do, instead of just going with what our ancestors were doing and was working for them, you know? And yeah, so as you know that we end every podcast with a quote. Today's quote, again, before I read the quote, please comment, share, like, subscribe, hit on that notification bell to make sure that you stay up to date, you know, as soon as we release a podcast. All right. So our ending quote today is by a Stoic, because we're talking about Stoicism. It says, "I shall never be ashamed of citing a bad author if the line is good." And this quote is by Seneca. And the reason I'm specifically reading this quote today, it's because, especially if you're a religious person, or other people could feel like, Claudia, you said this should be the biggest self-development mental health podcast in Africa, but why aren't you talking about African spirituality or Christianity, or, you know, any of the religions that we're familiar with maybe in Africa, and you're taking us back into philosophies that emanate or root from Roman Greek. And my response to that is that I think with the search for philosophy and religion to start off, we are trying to make sense of the world, right? And find meaning in our lives. And having something to lean on or that guides your life, like philosophy or religion, it sort of gives reassurance that there's a higher order at work, right? And that there's a higher order at work, even if things seem chaotic and unfair. And while in my search, looking for that reassurance and meaning and trying to find and to make sense of the world, I came across Stoicism. And it is what is working for me, has worked for me. I wish to see people adopt it and make it work for them, because it actually provides you with practical tips on how you can take things onto your hands and make them work. And if you feel like they're not working for you, we throw it onto fate. Religious people throw it to God, and African spirituality throws it to the ancestors, maybe. So again, it's about the conversations that matter, guys. Nothing is wrong, nothing is right, nothing is too perfect. Just the conversations that matter. I had an amazing time today. I hope you had an amazing time. Please do stay tuned for the next episode. If you made it to this minute, you are a part of this community. I love you so much. Please do keep on tuning in. Please do follow me on Instagram, Claudia Bowana, Real Talk with Claudia. This podcast is on Spotify as well. Do tune in. You can listen to it while taking your walk, while working, while cooking, and enjoy and share with friends. Otherwise, see you in the next episode. With love.